26. Welcome back to another edition of the podcast. It's been nearly 2 weeks since me and Paul sat here. It's a new year. We've had a Christmas since then. Quite a lot of action that we've not even spoke about. So it's going to be a bumper episode tonight. But Paul, firstly, Happy New Year to you. And have you had a good Christmas?
Yes, good mate. Yeah, Happy New Year to yourselves and Happy New Year to everyone listening. Yeah, it was all right, to be honest, Luke. Not a lot going on. Obviously, I only got to see one Wealdstone match due to a waterlogged pitch. But it was an enjoyable, restful period. So obviously, I'm back to work this week. So back to normality. Kids are back to school. So yeah, it was a nice break.
Yeah, for me, I'm back at school next week, so I've had this week off as well. Okay Christmas for myself. Just glad football's on, to be honest. Of course, I were blessed to be able to go to 2 football matches over Christmas, because I tell you what, by Boxing Day, you're craving for some football, and if it got called off, then I don't know what I'd do, and especially New Year as well. You're always looking out to try get to some football. So yeah, a little disappointing for yourself, but to be fair, Wealdstone overall are in a very healthy position, aren't they, at the moment? 12th, I believe, in the league table.
Yeah, they're sitting 12th currently with 2 or 3 games in hand over those that are in and around them. So I think they can push to 10th if they won those games in hand. Listen, we've got a huge schedule coming up as of sort of Saturday onwards. We've got 7 games in January, which is a Saturday-Tuesday combination, FA Trophy tie against Chelmsford from the National League South. So we've got some really tough games, 4 games away on the spin, then 3 at home, Southend twice in a week at the back end of the month. Probably not a great time to play them with their embargo lifted. So listen, we got a challenging sort of period in January, and it will really test the resolve of the squad and the injuries and the depth. But we're going into it in a good place. Getting the away win hoodoo off our backs, having beaten Maidenhead and Dagenham consecutive in the league, and then beating Billericay in the trophy. So listen, we're in a good place. So yeah, we're going into 2024 with a lot of confidence.
Where's this away form come from? Because you went from not winning away from home in nearly a year to 3 away wins on the bounce, I believe.
Yeah, do you know what? We don't know. I hosted the Stones Cast podcast earlier in the week, and we sort of dissected that a little bit. And it's, there was a real downturn when we played Kidderminster away and lost 1-0 in the last minute. The performance wasn't great, and the supporters were starting to be a little bit twitchy around the whole matter of us staying in the league. And yeah, we lost further away games in that, but actually, do you know what it is, Luke? I think, we all have our own opinions, but we've just been better in both boxes. We've managed to be able to defend better. We drew 4-4 with Hartlepool at the Vale. So, that's a bit of an anomaly. But we drew 4-4 with Hartlepool at the Vale. Had we, in other weeks, I know it was a home game, had we not been able to sort of produce chances and score goals like we have been doing, we would have lost that game. And I think that's the difference. We went 1-0 up against Maidenhead, obviously 2-0 up against Maidenhead. We went up early against Billericay and beat them 4-1. And then we sat in and took a little bit of pressure off Dagenham. The fans started getting on their bats. We went 1-0 up, and then we didn't look like we were going to lose. So, I don't know. It appears that, as everyone knows, Wealdstone play very, very good football. They keep the ball, they control the game between box to box. They keep the ball and control the game. It's in each other's boxes where they needed to be better. And in the last few weeks, they've proven to be better at both defending and scoring.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to Wealdstone because it's maybe not as positive, but the manager we might as well speak about it now, haven't we? But the manager has, of course, been rumoured, and I don't think it's anything official where Notts County have approached Wealdstone, but there's clearly a link there because Stuart Maynard plays quite a very similar style to what Notts County have been trying to do for the past couple of seasons now. There is a slight link, I believe, there where a few Notts County fans are saying Stuart Maynard, get him as the new Notts County manager, because, of course, Notts County let go of, didn't let go. Luke Williams has obviously moved on to Swansea, which were massive news, and I think the majority of us watching will just know how well he's done at Notts County when we were covering him last season as well. Do you think there's anything in that, maybe, or...?
Yes and no. Listen, Stuart Maynard's stock in the National League is very high at the moment, and everyone seems to respect him as a manager and as a coach with Matty Saunders as the pairing, and what they do on a very, very conservative budget with limited time with players is quite remarkable, really. That they get a tune out of an awful lot of players that need to be bettered. And they seem to be able to do that, and it's proven in the players that have gone further up the leagues and have been better playing for Wealdstone. So they do play an attractive brand of football. They're very similar to Notts County, and I'm not surprised that he's been linked. He gets almost linked tentatively to a lot of jobs. What you got to understand with Stuart is that he works full time outside of football. He supplements his income, and obviously his desire is to be a football manager. I can't personally see him staying at Wealdstone forever. We've got certain things in the pipeline which are going to be attracted to him. We've got a new ground coming in the next few years. We've got hopefully National League stability, some investment. Right. So those sorts of things are positive to us. My fear is somewhere like Notts County is a job that could attract him. It's a football league job. Obviously, it's full time, but actually on a remuneration sort of side of things in terms of his salary and being able to, the affordability, being able to move away from non-league.
You had a power cut.
I know. Sorry, my daughter turned the light off. Forgot I was in it. So in terms of that, I think Notts County I'm fearful a club like that would be attractive to Stuart, and a club like that would be attracted to Stuart. Who knows what happens in the future, Luke? I think we're not daft to think that he, at this present time with the stock as high as it is, that he's not going to be a name on anybody's list, on everybody's lists. It's got to be right for him. He's got a daughter and a wife. They're fairly settled in the area that we live, so things have got to sort of be right for him as well. But I think Notts County is definitely one of those that is attractive enough to him to sort of be considered if, of course, an approach is made.
I don't want to make this podcast about Wealdstone because it is what we spoke about so far, but I do genuinely think that there could be something in this. I think Notts County should be looking at Stuart Maynard. I think they'd be silly not to at least look at him. That they'll know about him, the owners have seen him last season. But if you're Stuart Maynard, and I don't know him obviously personally, I've interviewed him, he's a sound guy, and he seems very settled at Wealdstone and looks like he's trying to build a project there. But how often does an opportunity like this come up, maybe, at Notts County? Notts County, they're an ambitious football club. He'd get a move into the Football League. Notts County would offer a lot more money for him. And your name would be out there more as well. He'd be more well-known. He'd be more established as a manager, Football League. And there's something to build on there at Notts County. He'd play a very similar style of football. He'd be basically taking over what Luke Williams has already started there. Recruitment-wise, you've got owners like that who would back you and clearly know what they're talking about as well. For me, I kind of look at it and I think if Notts County were to approach him, I think he'd be, I wouldn't say silly, but I think you'd have to look into an offer like that because there's so much potential within that football club and the fan base there. So for me, I personally could see that happening. It's just depending on whether Notts County will be looking somewhere else, which they may well be doing. There'll be loads and loads of managers that they've probably shortlisted at the moment who could potentially take over. Now, almost 10 minutes in, we haven't even come to the live chat yet. Please remember to like and subscribe. Just under 50 people watching at the moment. Liking gets it out to more people. It gets recommended to more people. Subscribing, of course, builds the community as well up, and get your thoughts in and comments in the live chat. Also, as it's new year, I would also like to say thank you very much to our sponsors, Cards Accepted. There's a link in the description for you to go down and get 50% off your order. No contracts or monthly fees either. So please go and check them out, and also check them out on Twitter as well. We'll have a quick look at the live chat then. A lot of people have been in tonight. We've had Blondie Blue, who's a Chesterfield fan, and he said, "Hi, Chesterfield fight back to beat Solihull was a great advert on TV for the National League. 4-1 home wins on the trot. Now the cup." Yeah, of course, cup action for Chesterfield, isn't it? This weekend now, a break from the league. Of course, if Bromley were to win, the gap would be down to 4 points. Of course, Chesterfield would have a number of games in hand still on them, but it makes it maybe a little bit more interesting, Paul. Maybe if Bromley were to win, 4 points isn't much, and I'd rather have points on the board, to be honest, than games in hand for me.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Wealdstone, go back to them, they're in a similar position, and I've always said the same. You've got to win those games in hand. Now, Chesterfield are going to be as well placed as anybody in that league to win games in hand and be able to cope with the schedule that they possibly got coming up. If they go again in the third round and they win on Saturday, they've got another FA Cup tie. They do well in the FA Trophy. The games will start to mount up, and I think all Bromley are able to do is to worry about themselves. Barnet, all they've got to do is worry about themselves and keep those consistent runs going, and keep the pressure on Chesterfield, and then the ball's in Chesterfield's court to make sure that they do win those games in hand and do make sure that they carry on being top of the league. So, I think Andy Woodman and Dean Brennan are going to be going into their teams and those also sort of fighting towards the top end and saying, look, guys, just you keep doing what you're doing. We can only worry about ourselves. Let's Chesterfield worry about themselves. And listen, if Chesterfield keep winning, what can anybody else do? They can't do anything else. Chesterfield will win the league. But you're right, sort of squeezing that to 4 points, games in hand. We're going into January and February, long, big schedules. Who knows what could happen?
Yeah, this is what we talk about, don't we? Because, we look at the top three and they feel quite settled, don't they? You've got Chesterfield, who will be settled no matter what. They keep winning. I think what we saw against Solihull just shows the character of this side and the ability and the difference in class compared to the rest of the division. We don't know how much business they're going to do in the upcoming weeks, but that could be another thing as well that will just make them even stronger. So, of course, they're pretty settled at the moment. They've got so many games in hand, and they've still got a 7-point gap at this time. But you have to look at Bromley and Barnet. They seem pretty settled in second and third, and that has a massive advantage to other sides in the playoffs. You have to play one less game. You're guaranteed to be at home. So for me, I think Bromley and Barnet seem pretty settled at the moment. And at the moment, you'd probably be looking up rather than thinking we've got to stay and so stay in these second and third. We don't want the Tides to overtake us. Of course, we've got to think about that. But I think overall, Barnet and Bromley will be looking up at Chesterfield thinking, we just keep winning. You never know. All it takes is for Chesterfield to go on a bit of a bad run, and maybe we'd be back in this title race. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But that's how Bromley and Barnet have just got to keep thinking. And then Rocco, I think, who's a Southend and Tottenham fan, has said, up there, Luke Walsh, cheers. We've had Lee who's come in, and then Paul, Mr. Luke's come in.
Oh, hello, Luke and Paul. Currently sobbing after Kyron Lofthouse has been recalled by Barnsley. Our squad is getting quite thin recently. We do not have a game on Saturday, otherwise we would struggle. Yeah, I mean, it's very noticeable, isn't it, across the National League at the moment, Luke? A few transfers going on, but there's been an awful lot of recalls of loan players from different clubs for a number of reasons. Maybe not getting enough minutes, sort of being recalled to go to higher leagues, being recalled to go to teams in the same league to get more minutes, or, in the case of Wealdstone, that one lad, he's been injured, so he can't play. He's had to go back for rehabilitation. So, yeah, a number of recalls for squads, and it's starting to make interested in terms of where these players might end up and how these squads strengthen or weaken going into January and beyond.
This is where maybe the smallest teams in the division and maybe the smaller clubs overall, like your Gatesheads, your Altrinchams, might struggle. And this is where your Oldhams and your not your Rochdales at the moment, because they're a side going through a lot of issues regarding lack of players. I think they had like 15 players named. They couldn't even fill the bench on against Fylde, and also there'll be, I think, 1 or 2 more players are injured now, so they're down to 12 players or something ridiculous like that at the moment. But you've got Altrincham and Gateshead, who overall have quite small squads, I'd say. I know Altrincham have strengthened, haven't they, with making some pretty impressive signings, getting Mooney back and then Newby as well. But is this the time where when your Altrinchams, your Gatesheads might start to struggle, and your Aldershots even? Because I know they're playing in the FA Cup, but it's another example of, would you rather have points on the board? You know, they're only outside of the playoffs on goal difference, but it's likely they're going to be 3 points outside of the playoffs come Saturday evening, because obviously they're not playing and they will have that game in hand. But is this where your Aldershots, your Gatesheads, your Altrinchams, maybe your Halifaxes, we haven't been affected particularly at the moment, but it's likely we will in the upcoming weeks? Is that when we start to struggle and your Oldhams might?
Yeah, it's a difficult. I think you just got to hold your nerve and not get a little bit too worried if you're a fan. You know, it is only the 4th of January, and you know, players are being recalled because Football League squads and academies are looking at their players, the progression of their players, and sort of seeing where can they go next. So the likes of Halifax, Altrincham, Aldershot, they're going to be in the market for loan players. Loan players are going to want to come out, or young lads are going to want to come out on loan and play at National League or National League South and North level. So I think you just got to hold your nerve a little bit and trust your management team and your scouting team and your directors of football, sort of to suggest, right, let's get rid of a little bit of the deadwood. Let's get rid of a little 1 or 2 players that maybe not have quite hit the mark, be it a loan player or someone that's on contract. Sort of clear them out and let's sort of freshen the squad up. But you're right. I mean, January is a really tough time for any club because of the amount of games that are being played, especially if you're good in the cup in the cup competition. So I think, you know, this time maybe in 2 weeks when we're discussing it and where are the squads there and where are they at after sort of 3 or 4 more games, could be then a bit more nervy for certain clubs if, you know, they haven't strengthened or any strengthening that they tried to put in place hasn't quite worked or isn't starting to work. So I think we just got to be mindful of, still early doors. Let's just let all the players settle down and we'll see what happens from there.
Yes, certainly. Of course, like we've said, that is the main talking point, isn't it, at the moment in this division, is that playoff race, because that's where I think it's the most entertaining. It's very, very tight in that position. And I think if you look throughout the whole division at the moment, it's tight from more or less 4th all the way down to, you'd probably go all the way down to the likes of Boreham Wood or Dagenham even, who are down there. Of course, more on the negative side at the moment, Hartlepool United are a club that I want to talk a bit about tonight. Of course, they let John Askey go. He was dismissed from his duties. A manager that I respect quite a lot for what he did at Macclesfield, also what he did at York when he got them promoted. And to be fair, what he has done at Hartlepool, it's not ended in the best way, but to be fair, I think there's a lot going on there. It's not just about the manager. I think behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. There's certainly a lot of issues there with the owner. And let's talk about new ownership as well. But I do think it was the correct decision to have a change. You know, they're 18th in the league, 4 points above the drop zone, second to bottom in the form table in the last 5 games, and they've had 13 points in the last 19 games. Firstly, Paul, what were your thoughts on that? Do you think it was right to let him go?
I think the stats speak for themselves, Luke, and no one likes to see a manager getting fired and losing their job. But I don't think Hartlepool can afford to be in the National League North. You know, they were promoted out of National League only 2 or 3 seasons ago and absolutely romped the league, didn't they? So clearly, that behind the scenes in relation to maybe finances and ownership is all a little bit unsettled, and I don't think they're wrong in trying to change it now whilst they're still in a position where they're not cut adrift or they've dropped into the bottom four. The challenge is now is who do they go and find? John Askey is a proven manager at this level and National League level, like you said, with York and Macclesfield, and he's got vast experience playing for Macclesfield for a number of years as well. I saw them 2 weeks ago down at the Vale, and they nicked a 4-4 draw out of us. We were 3-0 up after half an hour, and they looked absolutely shot to bits. And some naive defending and some poor game management from Wealdstone's point of view got them back in the game just before half time, and even at 4-2, we were 4-2 up, and you just thought, for an ex-Football League side, for a team that should probably be pushing in the playoffs, they look bereft of ideas. The one thing that they did show though is that that resilience and fight to try and get back in the game and get that point. And sometimes when managers get sacked, it's because they've lost the dressing room or they've lost the players or the players aren't playing for him and all that type of sort of rumblings you hear. Now, that never gave me the impression when you look at them. They just looked a team short of confidence, a team that probably lacked a bit of quality, but certainly not a team that lacked any desire to want to try and win the game. So John Askey's left a squad there that I think is probably short of confidence, probably short of a bit of quality. They lost some key signings, didn't they, through injury? And maybe that new manager, as long as they go in and sort of make sure, be it Lenny Lawrence on a long-term basis or, for this short term, just tries to get a tune out of them, they'll be okay and they'll be safe, but they can't afford for it to slip further. And I think that's why they've acted now.
I think for me, it was always going to be an uphill battle as soon as Mancini got injured. And I've got, I think, a centre-half as well got injured at the same time. Dodds, it was, right at the start of the season. And ever since then, they've not been the same team. And then when even more injuries start to happen, like Dias Aruwe's being out injured, Umera's going to be now out injured. They haven't actually got a recognised striker who's playing. I think Hasty or maybe Gray will go up top for their upcoming game. But when you're having the amount of injury issues that they've had, you can't put all the blame onto the manager. Now, I know a lot of Hartlepool fans are blaming the owners at the moment. I think they're going to need to strengthen in January if they want to climb up the league. And it is a possibility, maybe, that they could go down this season. And I think after 5 or 6 games, when we saw them at the start of the season, you'd laugh if we said that the way they were playing. But at the moment, the form, they're second to bottom. And I think the only reason that it still feels like they're going to be fine is because of that form at the start of the season. But that's soon going to catch up with them, isn't it? Do you think they could be in a relegation battle?
From what I saw, no, I don't think so. I think there's 4 worse teams than them. The next, like we keep saying, the next few weeks is going to be crucial to them as any other team in the league, because they've certainly got to try and arrest that slide of lack of points out of games. Who knows, Luke? Lenny Lawrence isn't proven at National League level. He hasn't managed in 12 years since he was caretaker of, was it somewhere that I can't remember where it was? Was it Bradford or Cardiff?
I don't think he's managed actually in full time for nearly 20 years.
I think. And he's 76 years old now. I know there's a suggestion that he didn't want to be, is it Anthony Sweeney didn't want to be the head coach or the caretaker, so they've almost brought him in as a figurehead or as a consultant or as a helper to Anthony Sweeney, and Sweeney actually maybe doing the day-to-day. He knows the squad, he knows the players, he knows the football club, so that's got to be a positive. It's a really difficult time for them because the expectation of fans is going to be so much more than what they're expecting at the moment and getting at the moment. And they're not going to want to slide into that bottom 4. I genuinely don't think there's 4 teams, they're worse than some of the teams below them. I think there's 4 worse teams than Hartlepool. So in that sense, they will be all right, but they're clearly not going to sort of live up to what was expected of them at the beginning of the season. And at this moment in time, they've got to consolidate, stay in this league, go again in the summer and see where they take themselves.
I was actually very confident when they came down that Hartlepool would do well. And I very rarely say that about a side that comes down because they had a lot of players that have played in this division before. they made some impressive signings. Of course, Nicky Featherstone was there as well, who actually returned to the club when they were in crisis. They needed to bring him back to the side. But I just think appointing Lenny Lawrence, who's 76 years of age, I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about him, but I looked at statistics from online and what fans think of him. And let's put it this way, I saw a Luton account who commented saying, basically said, bad luck, guys. So that says a lot, doesn't it? And for me, I think they need to find someone on a permanent basis. You can't rely on a 76-year-old to live up to the expectations which Hartlepool set, because they're an ambitious, well, they're a club that should be ambitious in this level. They should be in the playoffs, and they shouldn't particularly be at this level with the fan base like many clubs. Just finally, them talking about managers that could potentially take over in the long term. I think a big one's Paul Hurst. That'd be the ideal one if I was a Hartlepool fan. He's done it at Grimsby. Anthony Sweeney, who's obviously the head coach at the moment, could be a name. Darren Sal, maybe. I don't think that'd work. Then you've got Matty Gray, who did it at Sutton and got them promoted. Lee Cattermole is in there, and Robbie Tinkler. For you then, Paul, who would you be looking at if you were the Hartlepool board?
Do you know what? I think it's going to be a difficult choice for Hartlepool, purely geographically. You know, it's not... if you're going to try and entice someone like Matt Gray from Sutton or Darren Sale from Woking, who are southern based, it's got to be an attractive proposition for them to uproot and go. You know, I know managers need to do this and players need to do this because it is their career and it's their job. But when it comes to National League level and the instability that might be there because of the level they're at and the fact that Hartlepool aren't maybe doing as well as they should, and you know they've got a track record of not keeping managers too long, that's got to be a really attractive proposition to them. So I think, you know, I think you're right. If you look at the Paul Hurst, the Tinklers, the Cattermoles, maybe as a new name in the coaching world within the National League, they're going to be going for those because geographically that's going to be more beneficial to them. But it appears that, you know, every now and then a club pull out a name that's not usual, and Cattermole might be one of those, but they're going to need to go with someone who's got a bit of experience at this level. You know, it's a difficult league. We've always said that, and we all agree with that. And Hartlepool find it difficult at the moment. I have to agree with you, Luke. I thought they were going to be much better than they were. You know, they didn't come down thinking we're going to piss this league, we're going to go straight back up, and we're too big for this league. They have respected what the league is about. The fans have respected what the league is about. The players understand the league, and actually they've really struggled to adapt again. So it's a tough gig for whoever it is because the expectations are high. They probably be realigned to more realistic, let's just stay in the league. So we'll have to see and wait who gets it. But I don't think, a little bit like Notts County, I don't think they're going to be short of applicants.
Who would it be then, Paul? Who would that manager be?
I think from the list that you gave, and you know, it's a fairly comprehensive list, I think so. Paul Hurst is probably a good shout. You know, geographically, it's good. He's a bit of a name. He's got a good, near enough a good track record. He knows the National League. He's managed in it. He's managed teams out of it. He's had teams, I believe, drop into it. So, listen, he understands it. So I think out of all of those, he would probably be a name that I would go for.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you look at someone like Lee Cattermole, you've got no idea what he's going to be like as a manager. Would it suit him to drop in for his first managerial appointment to go to a Hartlepool side that aren't in the best of place at the moment? The fans are clearly against a lot of things at the club. For me, I just don't think it'd suit him. Is Paul Hurst realistic? That's going to be the question. It might be that they keep Lenny Lawrence until maybe a takeover's confirmed, because I know there's a lot of rumours behind that. It's just something I've heard from a few Hartlepool fans. I don't know if there's anything to it, but there's a lot of talk about that at the moment. Anyway, we will move on and see what everyone else is saying at the moment. Get your thoughts in, guys, as well, on who you think should be the next Hartlepool manager and your thoughts on that. Stingem's coming, Paul.
Massive game for us this weekend. First time in the FA Cup third round for 36 years. and a sellout crowd. So yeah, best of luck. Enjoy the experience. I'd love to know what a third round game is like. So yeah,
Nick, I ain't seen it yet.
no, it'll be good to hear how it goes for you, and yeah, best of luck as well for that one.
Also, guys, I want to see all your football-related Christmas gifts. Let us know what you've got for Christmas in the comments. Also, Dave has been, I think it's Dave. Dave, Happy New Year, all buzzing for our trip to the Hawthorns on Sunday.
No, yeah, Steve, that was Steve.
Steve, it is. My eyesight's awful. But yeah, Happy New Year to you. And yeah, what a way to kick off 2024 for Aldershot after defeating Woking and now having a trip, taking over 4,000 fans. It's a day that I think a lot of us football fans at this level crave of, going somewhere like that. And I think you have to applaud what Tommy Widrington's done at Aldershot so far, don't you?
Oh, without a doubt. I think I'd also have to applaud Tommy Widrington for his post-match celebrations at Woking on Sunday. I thought they were at top drawer shithousery, I think is what you would say in terms of what he was sort of suggesting. But yeah, clearly he is a man has a team full of confidence. He's confident in his team. He's got the crowd, his supporters behind him. 4,000 up the road to West Brom at the weekend is a fantastic advert for National League football. It's a fantastic advert for Aldershot. We've spoken about it many times, haven't we, Luke? And almost a relative sleeping giant at this level, and the expectation of them to do better than they have been doing. And it appears that they're on that upward curve at the moment.
Harry's also coming and said, put the York initials, the York boys are here. John said, York's starting to climb the table now, 6 unbeaten, only 1 defeat in 9. Dippo back with more firepower going forward. Paul, you've got to admit it. We've certainly seen an improvement there as such. Unbeaten in 5, I believe now. No, 4, I think it is now. And of course, took 4 points off a Gateshead side that's been flying at the moment. Yeah, any credit would you give out there?
Yeah, no, listen, the one thing that the ownership did, that Matt Ugler did, they went and got a proven manager at this level, Neil Ardley. He didn't pull up any trees right at the beginning. There was no new manager bounced. They've got rid of a couple of players that were brought in that maybe aren't up to the level at York, and they have now got a bit of stability. And yeah, listen, fair play to them. I genuinely. I don't have any problem with York City Football Club. I had a bit of a problem with Matt Ugler and the way he conducts himself and sort of goes bowling into these clubs and gives it the big one, and actually never sort of backs it up. But recently, they're doing what they need to do to stay in that National League and slowly build and build and build. And come the summer, they'll probably be able to invest more money. They've got a settled manager who knows what he's doing, and next year they're going to be in and around the playoffs. I have no doubt about that, because they've got everything in place to be that way. And fair play to them. They've dug it out. They've done what Hartlepool need to do. They've done what Dorking need to do. So, fair play to York, and they're likely to sort of probably finish below or around mid-table.
Yeah, to be fair, when I look at York and what I see at the moment, I think they've started to learn with the recruitment side of things. Start the season, it was all about big names. Look at the pull power that York City have got now. When they brought in Cordner, which I do think was a good signing at the time. Look, we've brought in Batty's come in. We've brought in can't even remember, Woodyard, I believe it is, from Wimbledon. Look at these big names that we're bringing in. Recently, Billy Chadwick, perfect signing for York. They need more firepower going forward with Dipi Akiniyemi, because I don't think John Lewis is particularly good enough, and I think most York fans probably would agree with that if they're wanting to be looking up rather than just surviving in this division, which I think they're going to do fine, to be honest. That's a smart signing, and he's a young player. He's looked good at times at Gateshead. To be honest, Gateshead have been that good that he's probably not got the game time that he deserves. And then, of course, they've signed him on a permanent basis from Stockport York have. So for me, that's quite a smart signing, and for me, I think it'll work out at York. That Mr. Luke said, 11 minutes later, new record. Yeah. Do you count every time, Luke, mate, to be fair? Wouldn't surprise me. And then we've had David's coming, Paul.
Oh, Happy New Year. All good win for Wealdstone, made head well deserved. Yeah, I managed to catch up with David and got to meet him personally, which was great to have a chat on Boxing Day. Obviously, we didn't see each other New Year's Day because of the postponement. But yeah, Wealdstone managed to beat Maidenhead 2-0 that afternoon and was fairly comfortable overall. And as David quite rightly said, I think it was well deserved. But no, it was nice to catch up with David and discuss sort of Maidenhead's challenges around a new ground and trying to progress. And obviously the same with Wealdstone and how they're going to hopefully improve in the future with their possibility of their new ground and funding and investment that's sort of looking to sort of be put in place in the next couple of years.
They're two quite, not with the style of football, but overall they're two quite similar clubs, aren't they? Both play part-time, both are in this division. Everyone writes them off maybe at the start of the season, and both looking for new stadiums and to progress as a football club. So for me,
it was nice. I mean, there was no segregation. The fans get on very well. You know, there's a level of respect there, and it was a nice, calm, dry afternoon. So it was a good afternoon for football, and it was nice to meet David.
I know we've had a Rochdale fan who's come in and said Rochdale are a good team, but they had league 12 players, but they have 12 players available. Without a takeover, I don't think we can make playoffs. As a Rochdale fan, there's so much talk, isn't there? There's so many clubs in this division that are crying out for a takeover. I think for me, Rochdale have done very, very well. Maybe Rochdale fans, not all, will think that they have. I think you're probably undervaluing the division if you think that, and you're a bit naive if you think that you're not doing well at the moment, because we've seen so many clubs come down, especially in Rochdale's position when it's the first time, and struggle. Rochdale are certainly holding their own. They're on the verge of getting back into the playoffs. But of course, the issue is at the moment is the lack of players. And it's not like they're even bringing into it. I know they've just signed a lad who was linked with Oldham from Fylde. And I think that's quite a good signing as well. That the name's gone out of my head. And I think if you had that Rochdale side full strength, I think they'd be in the playoffs. Devante Rodney, Ian Henderson, you've got Cairo Mitchell going forward, Sinclair. There's a lot going forward there, but the issue is, of course, the lack of numbers. And I think Rochdale must be a side that are looking to invest more into bringing in more players. Would you agree with that, Paul?
Yeah, without doubt. I was just having a look to see what that lad's name is. It's a defender they've brought in, haven't they? A fullback that was at Fylde. And yeah, without a doubt, Kyron Gordon. So without a doubt, they're going to need numbers. I think they're not the only squad that are going to have to have a bit of supplement to help get through this period. But it seems a shame, an ex-EFL club seems to struggle with being able to bring in squad players. It must be a financial thing as well as anything else. And it's hugely unfortunate for any club that has a number of injuries, and you don't, I personally don't like to see it as a fan, because your team want to come up against, you want to see the best players on every team. Okay, it might help your team get some points, but ultimately you'd like to think you're seeing the best that each team can offer. So, I'm sure Rochdale will get through it. They've got the resource levels, I would imagine, to try and go and get these players. They've certainly got the pull. Someone coming out of the EFL or not getting game time somewhere, coming to play at somewhere like Rochdale is not a bad gig. So I'm sure they'll be okay.
They're well known for bringing in youngsters through, aren't they, as well, Rochdale? They've always had that reputation, and I think they still have, which is something that they've managed to keep, which there aren't many things that have been good about Rochdale in recent years, but the one thing is bringing in youngsters through, and that might be something that would attract, your young lads who are wanting to find a loan move. Also, I can't pronounce his name, but I wish the best for the guy who he got badly injured at Fylde.
Yes.
It's a massive safety hazard, isn't it? That I'd never even noticed it before, and then, God, it's a hard watch when you watch it. Let's put it this way. And I think Fylde, they've had a lot of issues before, haven't they? And have been taking the mick out before, but I think they've got another issue that's going to happen there from the league, to be honest, that Fylde have.
Yeah. Jezurun Uchengbulam.
Is that his name? Is that the guy who got injured? Because I cannot...
Jezurun Uchengbulam, yeah.
Not bad pronounce. Well, I wouldn't know, to be honest, because I don't know how to pronounce his name, but we'll call him that anyway. And then we've had Lee's come in and said, I think Oldham will get their home form together. They can make playoffs. Yes, well, I think Oldham we've seen. I know it's against the struggling Hartlepool side, but they've done the double over those. Maybe they're starting to get a bit of momentum now. You know, we've often seen Oldham, they'll get a win, they'll draw, they'll lose. They can never really get a run going, and maybe now in the new year they will. Of course, a bit unfortunate, Stones, I believe, has got injured now, who come on loan from, was it Tranmere? I think Wigan, I think it was. I think they've just brought in another player, haven't they? Walker, who's come in. But you know, he was clear. He was clearly on form. That Stones, he was at Oldham, scored a very, very good goal against Hartlepool. Awful defending, but a very good goal. And to lose someone like that, it's just unlucky. You can't do anything about it. It's just unlucky. But I think now they'll bring in even more players, and this is when maybe we'll see the best of Oldham. You know, there's been a lot of issues, especially recently. We saw the video where Reid put something on his Instagram story. He's been suspended. But to be fair, since then, they've actually improved. They've got back-to-back wins. So I think Mellon must have had a word with them, to be honest. And I know when something like that gets leaked on social media, you need to start winning it. Otherwise, those fans will turn against you, especially at a side like Oldham. I want to just quickly talk about that Reid then. Of course, he's a striker well known at this level, quite active on social media, you could put it that way. Likes the party life away from football, but he's a very, very good striker. He's been suspended by Oldham for that. Do you think he'll remain at Oldham? And if you don't, who could you see him going
to? Is he needed at Oldham? Then probably not. Because what you find with managers is they're very much more tolerant with someone who's going to add value to their team. Okay. If you go back in history, and I take an example, Paul Gascoigne, absolute pain in the arse, prime example, but they let him in the team because he was able to do things. Adel Tarapt at QPR in the Championship the year they did well. Two examples that are off the top of my head. But they're loose cannons. But the management seem to allow them to get away. Paolo Di Canio, you hear Harry Redknapp talk about him. Because they add value. They're that X factor. They're the lad that's going to score the goals or the lad that's going to stop the goals going in. If Alex Reid is dispensable because someone else can play in his position, then if they've suspended him, I'm pretty sure this January he is going to probably end up at somewhere like Halifax. And I know you stated yourself, Luke, that you'd like to see him at Halifax. There'll be a number of National League suitors who will want Alex Reid in their squad in the back end of this season, without a shadow of a doubt. He's proven at this level. He's come from full-time football. He clearly isn't a footballing issue for whatever reason. The social media posting and how Oldham took to it and how it was received on social media has caused him a problem. There'll always be a manager who will also turn around and say, I can get the best out of Alex Reid and I'll set him on the straight and narrow. So, he will end up back in the National League, no doubt. I personally, it's just a pure opinion that if he's been suspended now and Oldham don't need him and they're winning games, then they'll probably let him go because he clearly is not the right fit for their manager. He's clearly not the right fit for the dressing room. Whether we like what he did or not, whether we agree with what he did or not, Oldham Athletic don't. They've suspended him and I think he'll probably end up going.
What makes me laugh about that is, I'm an Oldham fan, might correct me here, but when I heard that video, Reid didn't say anything. I swear I can almost guarantee Norwood said, what are we doing here, lads? After that, I thought it was Norwood who I heard. Anyway, nothing happens to Norwood.
And do you know why nothing happens to Norwood?
Because he's too
exactly
good.
What I've just said. Because he scores goals and he's required by the football club to be able to do what they need to do and win points on the football pitch.
Yeah,
that is why Norwood has probably been given a slap on the wrist. And that is why Alex Reid, who naively has posted that, because although he may not have said anything, there's certain things within any business that you don't disclose to anybody else. And that's one of them. If that was a good social media message, look, lads, we're training on Christmas Day. We're desperate to do well with the supporters. Merry Christmas to all you Latics. Look at us training on Christmas Day. That would have been the perfect video. But when you get someone turning around and going, almost saying, what the fuck are we doing here on Christmas Day when we could be eating turkey and opening presents? It isn't a good look for the football club, is it? And the management team. So that is why they've acted on it. And I guarantee that's why they probably given Norwood a slap on the wrist and told him to wind his neck in. And that is why they told Alex Reid that he's no longer required at this present time, because he's the one that has disclosed it to the public. As whatever anyone else says, it wouldn't have been known if Alex Reid hadn't have posted it. Now, he's just been naive in doing that. He probably feels like he's not done anything wrong. He probably thinks that it's funny and he'll get a reaction that is positive. It's backfired massively for them. But listen, it's chip shot paper news. You know, everything moves on. We've lost managers since then. Teams have won and lost games. And does it really matter that, in the scheme of things, it might to Oldham fans? It obviously does to Oldham management. And that's how they've dealt with it.
What I find funny is if this upcoming game that Oldham have, if Norwood got injured the following Sunday morning, investigation complete, Reid's had been fined, he'll be back in the team now because he'll be hungry to prove himself, and then next thing you know, he'll go and score a number of goals. That is a possibility, to be honest. If they were other clubs, for me, I think Halifax would suit him. Would we go for him, though, because he'd be on quite high wages? We've seen what he's done at the past, not just at Oldham. There were a few issues when he was at Stockport and Solihull as well that he put on his social media. I think he'd done like live streams, chatting up girls and stuff, to be honest. So he's not the most likeable, I think, or the most attractive to be going to watch, well, to attract to the football club. So for me, I think I'd have him, but maybe that's just Halifax being desperate. Maybe the board would think, no, we don't need him. We're fine at the moment. And I think there's other names that Halifax could go to. One, of course, is Billy Waters. We need to get him back at Halifax now. That's one thing, just on the transfer news, before we wrap it up and finally go through the comments and then get on to the actual games. Of course, you look at Waters at the moment. He's not playing at Wrexham. The problem he's got is he's under contract and he's on $3,000 a week. How does a side with a budget like Halifax or a budget like Gateshead or Altrincham or anyone in this division, how do they get someone like that to come to the club? Because Billy Waters, he's not proven himself enough in the EFL for me to get another EFL move. He's proven himself in this league, and I think most teams will be looking at him, but most teams can't afford him. So what do you do? What's the solution for that, Paul?
Joe, it's a difficult one, Luke, isn't it? Because you've got three factors. You've got the parent club, the loaning club, and the player themselves. Now, the player can't be blamed for the fact that he can sign a contract for $3,000 a week at somewhere like Wrexham in terms of what they're doing at the moment. And players are always going to back themselves and say, well, whoever I am, Billy Waters, I'm good enough to get in any football team. That's what he's going to believe. He's going to think that he can displace Paul Mullins or Sam. What's the lad up top? I can't remember his name. And Ollie.
We've forgotten now. We don't talk about him anymore.
So clearly it hasn't worked. So he now wants minutes. He's I don't know how long his contract is for, but Wrexham is sitting paying £3,000 a week allegedly to a footballer that sat in the stands next to me and you. So it's no good in terms of financials for Wrexham. Altrincham, Halifax, Wealdstone need a centre forward. It then becomes down to a three-way thing. How much of Wrexham are willing to give up in terms of pay? They'll help pay for the loan move. How much is that football club that want to loan them willing to pay of that £3,000? And ultimately, you've still got Billy Waters, who's got to go and decide that he wants to go and join this football club. We don't know what Billy Waters' mindset is like. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that he's going to sit there and want to just take $3,000 a week and not play football matches. He's going to want to play football, but it's got to be right for him at the same time. It's got to be right for his family and everything else. So it becomes really complicated when you've got that loan deal. It's maybe a little bit different for an EFL player in an academy who's trying to establish themselves into a first team who wants a career going forward. Billy Waters has already played the National League. He's got himself to the EFL. It's a different dynamic when it comes to someone like him. I would like to think that he's not naive enough to sit there and go, I just cop $3,000 a week and I watch my mates play. I want to go and play football. I enjoyed Halifax. I'll go and play with Stockport. I'll go and play with Chesterfield. I'll go and play for Solihull Moors, whoever it may be, whatever the travelling is, and sort it out in terms of of what he wants, and then he tells these clubs, make the deal happen. And that's where it becomes difficult, because you've got three elements that you have to satisfy, and sometimes that just doesn't work.
I think for me, the only way it'd happen, and this is to the majority of the clubs in this division, is if he went on loan for the rest of the season, then his contract's up, but Wrexham pays wages until the end of the season. But then what's in it for Wrexham for that? Because they're still paying the majority of his wages. So there'd be nothing in it for Wrexham, I don't think, in that way. Wrexham clearly don't need him. It's a transfer that's probably backfired there. Last season, they did it towards the end of last season. It wasn't needed, I didn't think, at the time either.
Yeah, I mean, irrespective of who it is, if a football club's got a player that's earning an amount of money that's on their wage bill, and they can, it's like a manager being in a job. Paul Hurst is better off being employed at this present in time, probably better off being employed by Hartlepool than being sat on a sofa on a Saturday and not working, because his name's in the game. Billy Waters is going to be the same. There's no point him sitting next to me and you, Luke, in the stand. He needs to be playing games. Wrexham need him to be playing games, because if he does well in Halifax, as an example, at the back end of this season and bags 8 to 10 goals and gets a couple of assists and gets a few Man of the Match awards, all of a sudden, Wrexham have a transfer value on Billy Waters to try and offload him in the summer, be it Halifax or wherever else. But if he sat next to me and you for the next 6 months, who's going to go and try and go for him in the summer and want to pay a fee for him? And then Wrexham have got a even bigger loss, because they're not going to recoup any money they've shelled out for him. So Wrexham have got to sort of say, look, cut their losses and go, well, listen, we'll pay his $3,000 a week. You make sure he plays 60 plus minutes every week. Billy, you make sure you go and score a few goals. And at the back end of this season, let's negotiate what might happen next year. It could be that it's not at this football club. It's going to be somewhere else. He may go back to Wrexham absolutely flying and get in the team, and they sell somebody else. So it's got to be good for all parties. But I can't see that that they're short-sighted enough not to have someone sat next to him in the stands not playing, and they don't want to be sitting in the stands not playing when they could be out there in the shop window.
I think the other issue you might have as well, and I don't know what it's like. We don't know what it's like being a professional footballer, but if you're being paid that much, for all we know, since he's had this improvement in his wage, he might have got a bigger house, which costs more. He might have a mortgage. You'd be taking a significant pay. It's not like it's going to be an extra £200 less. If, let's say, it is Halifax, who are one of the poorer clubs in this division, I doubt we'd be able to pay more than. I don't know the ins and outs of our financial situation, but I don't think we'll be able to pay any more than $1,000 a week for him. That's three times less your wages. For me, it's just you can't expect him to do that. So for me, I just think it's certainly a difficult situation, and I think it's probably difficult for Billy as well. We'll come on to what people are finally saying. Could you read this out, please, Paul?
Yeah. Wokingham Aldershot derby was fun, even though we lost. I came away not feeling that bad since I saw our first goal at home since mid-October. Yeah, I mean, you got to take the positives out of any loss there, George, and I think you've certainly done that with seeing the fact that Woking have scored a goal. Yeah. So, yeah.
They've certainly improved, haven't they, Woking as well? Under Doyle, baby steps, maybe you would say at the moment. They've only had the one defeat against Aldershot. I think overall they've become more competitive. They're not getting battered like they were. It feels like there's a bit of fight there now, and there's still a good side there, but they've just got too many individuals for me. And I think maybe it isn't just about bringing in his own players. I think it's about getting the best out of the team that he's got at him at the moment. We've also had one. Do you think the Shots will be able to keep Josh Stokes beyond January? For me, yep. For those who don't know, there was a podcast, another National League one, I believe, or non-league one earlier, and I were listening to it, and Tommy Widrington was interviewed, and he spoke. And when he spoke to me as well, which was probably over a month ago now, he said that he doesn't expect anyone to be leaving the club in January. And even if it is a very good fee, it's unlikely that they're going to leave. So for me, I think Oldham should be able to keep that squad together. And then we've had Paul who's come in. Paul,
Yeah. Paul Rain, first time viewer of a live broadcast evening from Bratislava. So, yeah, very welcome, Paul. Nice to have you on board from mainland Europe. Just booked flights and ticket for the Shrimpers game at Wealdstone on the 23rd of January. My first visit to the Vale. Now, listen, Paul, we're very privileged that you're coming all the way from Bratislava to the wonderful Vale on the 23rd of January. It'd be nice to see you. And if you see me about, please come and say hello. It'd be nice to say hello.
Brilliant. And then we've got Woo or whatever it is. Another great pod, lads. Great chat. Cheers for tuning in once again. And then we've had Luke. Are you coming to Roots Hall? I'm working on it. I don't know it. I don't think so, but I'm working on it. And then Barrow fans put Pete Wild in. Out of this division now. I wouldn't take him back at Halifax at the moment. Millington's doing a good job. And then Joe's coming, Paul.
Yeah, Oldham and Scunthorpe were both in the relegation zone at this time last year. They certainly were, and I think the Oldham have clearly improved. Scunthorpe are doing all right in the National League North after a period of instability and financial worry. But certainly the likes of Hartlepool don't want to be in that situation coming up in the next few weeks.
And then we've had Chris who's coming in and said, Happy New Year, Luke and Paul from Wrexham in top 3 in League 2, looking good for League 1. Still good to see. I know we do have quite a lot of Wrexham and Notts County fans that do still tune in. It's still good to see, and it's good to see that they can't lose that connection with this division, can they? And if Halifax ever got promoted or Wealdstone, I don't think we would either, to be honest. It's once you've been in this division and been a part of it, it's hard to kind of lose touch with it. And then we've had Reid was back in training today with the squad.
There you go.
Right, so it sounds like he might be staying at what do you call it? At Oldham. Yeah, and then Joe's coming. According to Aaron on the National League Look, Reid has been previously warnings both at Oldham and his previous clubs about his social media conduct. And then thoughts on Kane Thompson-Somers after a run of games. We're a different side with him in, going forward and defensively, bosses the midfield. For me, yeah, very impressed with him, and I think he's been a very, very good midfielder so far for us. We'll get on with the predictions then, because we're almost an hour in, and we haven't even started with them yet. So I do apologise, Paul.
No, you're all right. No, it's good.
We'll have a look at the actual scores on the doors before we do this. Paul, a very, very good week for yourself. Happy with that?
Oh, I was over the moon. When I messaged you and said I think I've got about 14 points, I couldn't believe it. And like I said, if Wealdstone could defend against Hartlepool, I'd have probably had 15. But listen, to claw 4 points or 6 points off you, then wow, I'll take that all day long, Luke.
To be fair, there were a few more results as well, and it was only like 1 goal away from an extra 3 points rather than 1. Chesterfield versus Aldershot, we both would have got an extra 2 points if it wasn't for that. They just needed that final goal. And they were, I think Guy said Solihull 2-1 Oxford, and I think you might have said like 2-2. It was something like that anyway. Anyway, let's get on with the predictions. So the table at the moment, Chesterfield, like we said, still running away with it. But the gap isn't as big for the time being if Bromley do get a win. But they are going to a difficult place in Maidenhead. Barnet just behind them also have a game in hand on Bromley. They win that, they go to second, depending on how many goals they score. Solihull back up to 4th, certainly have improved after a lot of questions about them potentially falling outside of the playoffs and being found out. They've got back in decent form and, of course, defeated Chesterfield and almost did a double over them, but Chesterfield were just too good on the day. Gateshead and Altrincham both sitting 5th and 6th, but Halifax and Aldershot just behind them. Aldershot, Halifax, Altrincham and Gateshead all on the same points. It's all on goal difference, but then you've got Oldham and Rochdale and Eastleigh who can all get into the playoffs after Saturday, depending on results. And then there's a bit of a gap to Wealdstone. Yet they've got 3 games in hand on Rochdale. Now, if they win all 3 of those games, they would be if they won, they're both 2 games in hand. They'd be on 39 points, and they'd be a point behind Halifax and Aldershot. Paul, if you look at it like that, I haven't actually noticed that, but you're in a very good position.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. But the $1 million question is making sure that those points are actually put on the board. We can surmise and predict and suggest the what's if the maybes of the 3 games in hand. But if we don't win 3 games in hand, then it's going to be difficult to sort of claw up that league out of that mid-table position. So, listen, it's a nice position to be in, but it's going to be tough in January because we have got a lot of Saturday, Tuesday games.
And then further down, Maidenhead doing well themselves, a lot better than we expected. Boreham Wood have improved recently. Dagenham have as well. So have York. Southend, if you actually gave them the 10 points back that they had, they'd still be outside the playoffs now, which kind of brings to a close them being considered a playoff chaser this season. Even with the point deduction now, I think it's too far for them, even with this takeover. Then Hartlepool spoke a lot about them tonight. Dorking are hovering above that drop zone. Of course, it was a massive win against Oxford that they needed, but they're still only 4 points above the drop zone. Are they a side for you you're concerned about, Paul?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I think you may see an improvement in Woking, although it hasn't happened too much yet, as we just sort of stated, Lou. But yeah, Dorking is certainly that one team. York have pushed up. Southend are sort of teetering. They've not been so good recently. Again, same as Hartlepool, but Southend have got positives. They've had an embargo lifted. They're going to get new players. Hartlepool got a positive potentially in having a new management team. Dorking have lost another player, James McShane, to an ACL injury at the weekend. And, I think they've been bereft with injuries this season. And it's going to be a difficult sort of 6 months for Mark White. And who knows, do we see him sack himself at some point at this season? Yeah. But I just don't think. I've always said that out of those bottom 4, Oxford are the team that will get out of it if any of them do. And I think if they do, they'll be replaced by Dorking.
I think for the rest of the division, I think there's 4 teams worse than them. Dorking are that one side that I think, like I said, Woking and Hartlepool, maybe it's because we think they're too big of a club to go down, but I think they will be fine. And then when you start looking further up, you look at those sides, it'd take quite a lot for them to drop into this relegation fight. For me, I think it'll be between these 5 clubs. Feels like Kidderminster are gone, doesn't it? Maybe you'd say the same about Fylde, although I have seen ability there, I think, to maybe survive. And then you've got your Ebbsfleet and your Oxford. I'm not going to say who I think is going to go down because that's for next week's podcast. But for me, I think it certainly is very tight down there. Well, very, very tight in a way down there at the moment. But I do see quite a few sides pulling away from that drop zone. We'll get on with the predictions then. First game, Altrincham versus Barnet. This is a bit of a good game, this. I think if you were TNT and you were televising a game this week, this would be the game that I'd be looking to televise. Both sides scored quite a lot of goals between them. Barnet obviously did the double over Southend. Altrincham, not on the best of form, of course, against Halifax. We took 4 points off them. But they've had a few players that have been brought into the side too. Paul, what are you thinking for this game?
I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I think
we've agreed.
You are?
We've agreed on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Luke. They're both very capable of scoring goals, and they're both very capable of letting goals in, and they're both good footballing sides. Both in the top 6. I think you're right. You look at all the matches that are there. That's an attractive one if you were a neutral to go and watch. Barnet have arrested that slide slightly that they had recently, and Altrincham have been fairly consistent throughout the season. So I see it difficult to split them apart. So I've gone with 2-2.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, Barnet, just done the double, haven't they, over Southend? It's a different type of game against Altrincham. Altrincham, I thought they are a good side, and if they took the chances in the first half, in the second game at our place, they probably would have gone on to win that game. I think defensively we're quite good against us too, but the game away from home, we just very similar to that Gateshead game away. We frustrated them, we pressed them, and they just couldn't cope with it. They couldn't play the usual game, and it's something that Halifax are so good at, with disrupting the opposition's identity about them. Gateshead being known for keeping a lot of the ball and slow build up. You know, we disrupted that. Altrincham, fast attacking football, disrupted it, and sides can't cope with it. But for this game, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Final predictions end 1-1, 1-1. A lot of people going for draws. Someone's backed Barnet. Yeah, I've had a few people backing Barnet there. Next game, Dorking v Oldham. The two clubs have got some affiliation between them, I believe now. Very, very similar clubs historically, but they've somehow in recent years become friends. Paul, how do you see this one going?
Well, one, Oldham aren't at home, so that's always an advantage to them, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Dorking, yeah, again, they're just not in a good run of form. I've gone with Dorking 0, Oldham 3. So I've gone quite heavy with Oldham to sort of Alex Reid to get a hat trick. No, I mean, listen, I don't know. I think they're just going to be too strong for Dorking. There seems to be more positivity around Oldham fans and Mickey Mellon. You know, they are still a little bit erratic with their home form, but generally, you know, they're a team improving. And I think they've got to be someone to be a little bit more fearful of in the back half of this season. And I think Dorking will succumb quite easily to them on Saturday.
I didn't hear 3-1, did I?
Did you say 3-1?
Is that what you said?
3-0.
Oh, phew. I said 3-1 to Oldham. Yeah.
3-0, yeah.
Dorking always seem to get a goal, don't they? They'll probably go 3-0 down and then get a goal. But for me, Oldham been a lot better away from home this season. And of course, they seem to be gaining a bit of form, don't they, recently, and starting to put a bit of a run together, which is something that they've needed. So I'm going for a 3-1 Oldham win. Next game then that we've got, your side, Ebbsfleet versus Wealdstone. Of course, Wealdstone on decent form at the moment, but Ebbsfleet must look at this as a type of game, looking at Wealdstone's away form overall, as a game that you've got to win if you're wanting to try and get out of this drop zone.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, Luke, I completely agree with you. You know, Ebbsfleet just they're just not a team that are playing with any sort of confidence. You know, they went to Bromley away from home the other week, and they must have thought, here we go, they're 1-0 up, they're bossing the game, and end up losing 5-1. And I just don't think they're a team that are very good at the moment. And I'd be interested to see what they are like at home. I think we're quite grateful at the moment. Wealdstone are in a good run of form, and I'd be very surprised if Wealdstone play like they can, they will win the game. I've gone with 3-1 to Wealdstone. They are creating chances and they are scoring goals. So I think as long as Wealdstone go to that game with a positive attitude, knowing that they can win, I think they will win.
I'm going for a 1-1 draw, me. Maybe a bit different, but they've got to pick up points at some point, Ebbsfleet. And to be fair, at home, we've seen them get a few decent results there. A few decent points, maybe not wins. And I think when you look at Ebbsfleet, there's a lot of games where they've probably drawn them, and maybe you'd say, well, you're going to be winning those type of games. I'm going for a 1-1 draw on me. We'll move on to
the recent problems that appear to be with Ebbsfleet, reading their forums and sort of seeing what their fans write is they're not particularly good at the back. They seem to give the ball away a lot. You know, at the moment, the way that Wealdstone play with the one up top with Obiero sit just in behind, sort of buzzing around the front line with your wide players. I know we're going to lose Taran Al-Arakia to the AFCON, but, you know, one thing Stuart Maynard can do is find a wing back. So the likes of Mason not Mason Barrett, sorry, Brandon Mason will be back in, who's a recent signing, plus Brooklyn Alunga from MK Don. So, we've got a real threat going forward. And I think if we can put their back four under pressure, that's where they crumble a little bit. And I think that's where I will see us sort of benefiting and winning the game.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to the next prediction now. I've just been made aware that Chris is watching us, so all eyes on my prediction, apparently. Next game, we've got Hartlepool versus Oxford. Of course, I believe it was Hartlepool who gifted Oxford there. Maybe gifted's the wrong word. It was Oxford's first win against Hartlepool at the start of the season for the first win in the National League. And it was a bit of a cracker, to be fair, for Oxford. I think they won 5-2 at their place. Of course, it's a different story going to Hartlepool now. I can't see a new manager bounce from this overall for Hartlepool. But for me, being at home, there's got to be game. You'd probably say this is a must-win for Hartlepool. Otherwise, maybe you would say they are considered a side that could potentially go down this season. I don't think, no matter what will happen, they will. But there'll certainly be a lot of increasing conversation about them being considered a side that could go down come the end of the season. So for me, I'm going for a 2-1 Hartlepool win. I think the consequences of losing is just too significant, and I think they'll manage to get the win. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone exactly the same, and we're picking this, sort of trying to pick the result of this. I had very similar feelings. It's the 6 point of the week. I think there will be a new manager bounce to a point, and as a new manager or new management team going into Hartlepool, you couldn't ask for better than being at home against a team that are in the bottom 3 or 4 and who aren't really have got any sort of form behind them. Oxford City are capable of getting a result against teams. We've seen that over the season. I just, like you said, being at home, that's a long way to travel for a team that are part-time. I can't see Hartlepool losing the game, but it's not going to probably be an easy one. So I've gone with 2-1 as well.
We'll move on to the next game then now. We are on to Maidenhead versus Bromley, the battle of the industrial style of footballers, I would say. Both play quite an anti-football style. Of course, both have been in this division for quite a long time now and have both established themselves. Of course, Bromley sitting second in the division at the moment, and they're becoming a very, very hard side to beat. Maidenhead are also the type of side that are good, especially against the better sides in the division. It's been well known for a number of seasons now. And I think, depending on how both sides play such a similar style of football, it should be quite an interesting and an entertaining game. I'm going for a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone with Bromley to win 2-0. I've recently obviously saw Maidenhead down at York Road, and in the first half they conceded too much ground to Wealdstone and allowed them to play in their half, and because of that, Wealdstone made it very easy. And if they do that to Bromley, who are even more direct than Wealdstone are playing at the moment, then they're going to be banging trouble, especially if they're if they're going uphill. It slopes sort of, from top to bottom as you go in the ground. And if you're kicking uphill the first half, as Wealdstone were doing, the ball will hold up. The pitch is a little bit wet. It's going to be heavy because of the rain that we've had. The ball will hold up, and that will probably help Oldham in relation to, Maidenhead, Bromley rather, in relation to the way they play. In the second half, Maidenhead played 10, 15 yards further forward and put pressure on Wealdstone, going, not allowing them and conceding ground to them. And I suppose they've got to play in a similar manner to that against Bromley, who will get the ball wide, who will be direct, who have got, a big team. One thing that was noticeable with Maidenhead, they're very comparable in terms of size. They are a big football team. Speaking to David before the game, though, Luke, and just to temper that thing around beating teams in the top half, all the big clubs, they've not done it quite as much this season as we probably imagined to have done. So I just think it's just going to be a bridge too far for Maidenhead. Bromley are just are a team absolutely flying with confidence. Dispatched Ebbsfleet 5-1 at the weekend. and I could see them again winning this time against Maidenhead 2-0.
Well, I hope David's watching, because he says I never backed them, and I've backed them when they had the underdog against it. Well, not backed them fully, but of course gone for a draw when they were an underdog against Bromley. So, yeah, Dave, I hope you're still watching. And then we've got to Rochdale versus Kidderminster. Usually you'd say Rochdale win, probably most people would. In this game, you're playing against bottom of the league Kidderminster, who were struggling. But with the amount of injuries that Rochdale are having at the moment, they've just lost to Fylde away from home. They're down to 12 players. It's a bit of a Southend situation to a certain extent, where they were a couple of months ago at the start of the season here, when you're down to proper low numbers. Yeah, Paul, how do you see it going? Because it's not as plain sailing for Rochdale as some may think.
No, it's not. But I always try and look at the home side, giving them the benefit of the doubt because they are at home. I think Rochdale are going to have too much for Kidderminster. I have gone 3-1 to Rochdale. I think, as you say, Kiddie being bottom of the league, they almost look like they're done and dusted already. And yeah, I just can't see Kiddie getting anything out of the game. Rochdale are going to have too much going forward and will win the game 3-1.
I've gone for a 1-0 Rochdale win. I still think they'll manage to win. But yeah, I think if you're Kidderminster, you've got to be looking into this game. They're better away from home than what they are at home, but you've got to be looking into this game thinking, look, I know it's Rochdale. I know that they're a good side, but with the amount of injuries they're having at the moment, we've got to take advantage of that if we're wanting to survive this season, because is it something like 7 or 8 points now they were adrift at the bottom, and they really do need to start picking up results if they do want to survive this season or have any chance of surviving. Next game then, Solihull Moors versus Woking. Of course, Woking, we've spoke about them. You look at the form, it's not dreadful for their position at the moment. It's not brilliant. They've had a bit of a new manager bounce. I think overall, you'd probably take that without bringing in any new players. Solihull, of course, doesn't look the best for their current position, but they've had some very difficult opponents, and they did manage to beat Chesterfield, and they were so unfortunate. Well, I wouldn't say so unfortunate, but they gave it their best shot against Chesterfield away as well. They went 2-0 up, and when a side scores 3 goals in as many minutes to go 3-2 up, there's not much you can really do about that to a certain extent when you're just simply being outclassed in that position. So for me in this game, it's a bit of a rare prediction. I'm going for a 0-0 draw between the two sides. Paul, how do you see it going?
If you'd asked me what this would have been a few weeks ago, I probably would have gone with a more favourable result for Woking. New manager, Solihull were going through a period where they were letting goals in. But recently, listen, Solihull have acquitted themselves very, very well against Chesterfield. They've seemed to have arrested that slide a little bit. Woking's new manager bounce, and the new manager, again, it's small steps of improvement. Like you said, Luke, there hasn't been a massive upward curve of improvement. So I have gone with Solihull 2, Woking 0. And on that point, Luke, when Solihull are 2-0 up against Chesterfield, having beaten them already in the Boxing Day game, and to come to Will Grigg, Ryan Colclough and Tom, and his name's gone out of my head. Tom Naylor, sort of triplets of goals. That just sums up Chesterfield, doesn't it? To be able to have those 3 on your score sheet within 6 minutes of going 2-0 down just goes to show the strength Chesterfield have got. So Solihull have really got to come out of those 2 games, hopefully with a lot of confidence in terms of what they were able to achieve. There's not going to be many teams this season can say they beat Chesterfield in one game and were 2-0 up against them in another. So I think they're just going to be way too strong for Woking. Woking are slowly improving, but Solihull are going to be too strong for them.
See any final predictions then? So the Woking fans gone for 1-0 to Woking. Still over 50 of you watching, which is pretty impressive considering 2 of the big boys that aren't playing in the league this week. And of course, we've done the majority of the predictions. I know a majority of you probably might not want to comment, but if you do, get your predictions in, guys. We'll put them on the screen. Next game is Southend United versus Halifax. Now, maybe I'm biased here, but I think this is, I would go as far to say, alongside Altrincham versus Barnet, the game of the game week. For me, both sides play quite similar style of footballs. Both overall, I think, quite hard to break down, quite hard. Might not look it there for Southend's perspective, but I think overall, especially at home, quite hard to beat, I would say, although Southend have lost the last 2 games at home. I think we look at Southend, they're clearly looking to bring in more players. Of course, they brought in Morton from
Western-super-Mare.
Western-super-Mare, that's down your way, isn't it, Paul? I believe. Of course, they brought him in. They're looking to bring in more players at the moment. I'm going to be biased here, but I think we've done very well against the better teams, and I'd class Southend, not forgetting their position, but I think for thinking about them overall, I class them as one of the better sides. We've done better against the better sides, especially when we're the underdog, which I say we would be in this game, considering Southend are very good at home overall this season with some of the teams that they've defeated. We've drawn against Rochdale, we've drawn against Altrincham, we've beaten Altrincham, we've beaten Gateshead. The form looks good overall and healthy. It's a bit of a bogey side going there since we've come down this season. Yet I'm going to back us to win 2-1. Chris, you won't like that, but I have to apologise. I just can see us winning there, to be honest. How do you see it going, Paul? And don't back us to win.
No, I haven't backed you to win. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. You know, you know, when you get a gut feel for different sort of fixtures, and it just struck me as one that probably wasn't going to be high scoring, like you said. They're both very resolute, aren't they, in terms of defence, and especially in Southend's. You know, when you look at Southend's predicament, the fact that they were able to put out a team every week and produce the results they produce, they've done unbelievably well. The big concern for me with Southend now, there's a couple of things, isn't there? In terms of, do the players they get in, will it upset the settled squad and that mentality of everyone's against us, and does that upset the sort of the way that the squad have been? Clearly, they need players in. They need someone like, you know, a striker after they lost Kanu recently, who went back on loan. The other thing is now that, you know, they're financially in a better place. I wouldn't suggest they're financially safe, but I don't know I don't know their situation completely. But now they're financially in a better place, and they're unlikely to get relegated. Will the players take their foot off the gas a little bit? You know, it's great news that Kevin Mayer and Darren Curry and the other chap whose name escapes me has they've signed new 2-year deals. So there's stability on the management side. They clearly feel that the project down there is one that they want to work on, and they will attract good players. But I think they're probably sensibly looking at some of those lower league players who could potentially step into National League and to bolster the quality they've already got, and then maybe in the summer go and get some more names, if you like. On that front, Halifax have got a very, very good run of form. They are away from home, but they are very difficult to beat. I think both teams is whether they can actually score a goal or two or not, and that's why I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
I think Harry Cardwell, he might be out, but also for us, we've had our injury issues like most clubs have, but Millie Ali, he was out against Altrincham at home, and you could tell we missed him so much. We rely on him going forward quite a lot, and it is a bit of a concern. I don't like it when a side relies on a player heavily. Of course, at times you have to do that, especially when you're a club like Halifax. But for me, if with him not playing, it depends. If he's playing, then I think I'm going for a 2-1. If he's not, then I think it could be a bit of a different score. It's certainly going to be low scoring, I think. Both sides clearly build from the back with the way they like to play. I understand what you said there about it being Southend, us against everyone else with Southend. Will that stay the same because they've had that takeover now? This might sound like a silly comment, considering we're only just over halfway through the season, but is there that much for Southend to play for now? Now they've had the takeover, they're gonna be safe. They're too good to go down. They're gonna be safe. But is it too much with the minus 10 points? It's too far for them to be classic in a playoff race. So they're in a position at the moment where there isn't that much for them to play for to a certain extent. And with all the new players coming in, you've talked about it unsettling the side. It will to a certain extent. I think there'll be players that might leave in the future as well. They know after this season they've done their bit now. How will the Southend players react now to this? Because we've talked, haven't we, about Southend at the start of the season and how well they were doing as a squad and how they were well respected. But now they've got another issue, haven't they? Where they're not in the same. They're in a situation now where there's more pressure on them maybe to perform because we know the ability of the squad. There won't be as many excuses now where we're down to limited numbers. We're tired. We've had a 10-point deduction. Now they're actually bringing in players to back them up. So for me, maybe it's a bit of a difficult situation for Southend. But yeah, I'm going for a 2-1 Halifax win. We'll move on to Boreham Wood versus York. Yeah, York are actually unbeaten in 5. Boreham Wood on quite decent form themselves. 1 defeat in 5 for them. Paul, how do you see this going?
Again, I've gone low score. I've gone with the Boreham Wood 1-0 win. And I think, again, that's purely just gone with the fact Boreham Wood are at home. Very, very nice playing surface. Even with all this rain we've had down south, it'll be impeccably carpeted. Like, you'd almost look at it as if you think, is it real grass? It's that beautiful. So, I think they'll use that to their advantage. They're on a bit of a better run, as we can see. 1 loss in 5, actually 3 wins. York need to turn those draws into wins, and they'll probably be even further up the table. So I think it's just going to be very low scoring, and I've gone with the Boreham Wood 1-0 win.
I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I've liked my draws this game week, and I can see another one here. Both sides on decent form. Both sides draw an awful amount of games. I think York have got the most amount of draws in the division. We can do quickly once we've just done this final prediction. We'll get on to the final game. Gateshead versus Eastleigh. This is quite a decent game. Is it still the same game week? I don't know. That's the next. I was wondering why that was on there. Before we close things, we bring things to a close. As someone's requested it, and we've had a few Chesterfield and Aldershot fans obviously tune in tonight. Some quick predictions: Watford v Chesterfield. What's your thoughts, Paul?
Well, listen, Watford are doing much better under the new management of Valerian Ismail, aren't they? Valerian Ismail, rather. Sorry. He seems to have got a settled side and he hasn't been sacked. So I think that's a positive for Watford. I can't see Chesterfield winning, but they're going to certainly give them a good game. I think Watford are going to probably win 3-1.
Hard one to call because there's so much between the two sides. I always like to back the National League side, and I'm trying to think who'd be more likely to get a result: Aldershot at West Brom or Chesterfield at Watford. I'm going to go for a Watford 5-2 win. I think there's one area you can get Chesterfield, and it's defensively for me. West Brom versus Aldershot then. West Brom 5th in the Championship, so going quite strong themselves. I think it also depends how seriously the Championship sides take this competition. Aldershot will be up for this. 4,000 fans. It's a bit unknown for Aldershot, especially in recent years, so it'll be interesting to see for them. It'll be a good day out. It's another game which is like, you should back West Brom, but it's hard to back West Brom with when you want Aldershot to do well. Same with Chesterfield. I'm going to turn it over to you. How do you see it going, Paul?
I with all due respect to Aldershot, they'll go and give it a very, very good go. They've got some very good young players who want to sort of perform on a platform of an EFL team. I just listen. Aldershot have got to go out, start like any team in that sort of game is start early, try and take your chances, go 1-0 up, 2-0 up, hang on in there till half time. But I think West Brom will come out comfortably, sort of winning by sort of 3 or 4. I don't know, 4-1 to West Brom.
I think what's a bit
I'd
of a
like
blow
to see
for
both, it'd be nice to see both teams at least score a goal. And I think if they could score a goal that puts them team in the lead, it's an even nicer experience for the supporters. So I'd like to see them both register a goal. And if anything, if they're going to lose the game, I'd like to see them at least be winning at some point, maybe just for their fans that are going to be travelling all that way and sort of backing them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think for me, when I look at Aldershot versus West Brom, I think what won't help them, Josh Stokes is out with obviously it wasn't as well. Neither was a booking, especially the second against Woking. He got booked for diving, and if anything, it was a penalty. So I feel bad for the lad. Maybe it's a good thing, a blessing in disguise, maybe, because if he's been shown on national television like that against West Brom, where he would likely be one of the stars for Aldershot if he was one, maybe clubs a bit be looking at him. Maybe you could look at it like that if you're wanting to take any comfort if you're an Aldershot fan in him missing the game. Of course, Josh won't see it like that, or any of the Aldershot team. Also, Minogu, I think it is, the centre, he's a huge centre half. He was very good against us. He's obviously going to AFCON, so he'll be out. I don't know if Toloi, he might be out as well with an injury, because I know he's been injured. So for me, I think West Brom will get through this with a breeze, to be honest. I don't want them to, but I think they'll win 4-1. I think that most brings it to a close then, Paul. Everyone stay on, because we've got a final video that we put on at the end. You don't have to in future weeks, but I want you all to see this while you're live. Please remember to like and subscribe. We've still got just over 50 of you watching at the moment. Of course, liking gets it out to more people. Subscribing just builds the community even more. So thanks to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Paul, once again, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem, Luke. As always, glad to be involved. It's great fun to talk National League on a weekly basis.
Yeah, it certainly is. A bit of a different setup like the old days, this. But yeah, it's been great to speak to you. Of course, we've gone on for nearly an hour and a half now. It's a good thing in a way. Maybe others won't see it as that, because it shows we've had a lot to talk about tonight. But we will see you next week, not live, for our updated predictions. And then we will see you in 2 weeks' time, back live here, previewing all the upcoming games. Bye for now.